Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Kyle Mox. I'm Associate Dean for National Scholarships Advisement at Arizona State University and Director of the Office of National Scholarships Advisement. And with me today is Dr. Lori Stoff, who is our Assistant Director and is the primary advisor for many of the programs we're going to discuss today. So today, our emphasis is going to be on a range of awards that are specifically for the study of critical foreign languages. And we'll define that term in a moment. And we're going to be emphasizing a couple of federal programs in particular, but talk a lot about some other options as well as many of the resources available at ASU for you to engage in critical foreign language study. I recognize some names in the participants box, but many people, this might be your first encounter with ANZA. That term national scholarships does have a specific meaning as opposed to just sort of general scholarships that you might get to help with your tuition costs at ASU. These are all going to be merit-based, meaning that even if they do have some criterion such as financial need, they all are based on some sort of criteria that makes this competitive. They're looking for specific qualifications in the applicants, not just requirements. These awards that we're talking about are all open to a national pool, which means that you're competing against not just dozens, but hundreds or even thousands of other applicants, which means therefore that's very competitive. And because they're very competitive, they tend to have a good reputation that goes along with that, the prestige that comes with having won something that's difficult to get, and that looks great on a resume, can open up a lot of doors for you down the way. Aside from the programs that we're going to designate as specifically ASU programs, most of these awards, most of the awards that we would refer to as national scholarships are coming from outside of ASU. And so that's like the first conceptual hurdle for a lot of students to get past, is that these are not ASU awards. You are competing against other applicants. And we want to help you understand that, so you understand how much effort, how much intensity, how much focus to have in the application process itself, because these are very valuable awards. We will meet you where you're at and provide you a lot more attention than you're probably used to. We hear that a lot. I'm not sure how much of it is always desired, but obviously we do things like this, present information to people. We often go out into departments and to the other campuses and even online with our digital immersion students to make sure the information is getting to the right students at the right time. Once you begin the process, you will jump in and start working one-on-one with either Dr. Stoff or myself, or maybe one of our other advisors, depending on the award. And a lot of that's going to be focused on writing instruction. Once you have a grasp of what the criteria for award is, what the processes are, then we'll start working on application essays, because I can't think of a single award that doesn't have it at some way, shape, or form an essay. Yeah, writing instructions integral to what we do. If there's an interview component to it, we'll help you prepare for that. And some of these awards do have a nomination or endorsement process. And if that's the case, then we also manage that process and ensure that you get the endorsement or nomination that you need. In many cases, that means coordinating a faculty committee. We also work with your faculty to ensure that you're getting your best possible letters of reference and helping you be a good mentor to them or a mentee to them. So in terms of critical foreign languages, what we mean by that are the less commonly taught foreign languages, awards that the federal government often designates as critical to U.S. Foreign interests, or the U.S. interests abroad. Generally speaking, that's non-Western European language. So English, Spanish, French, German generally are not going to be on that list. Most of the Western European languages, Western Europe is not a high priority for Department of State, Department of Defense, right? Not a lot of hot spots where Italian's being spoken. But if you stop to think about it, all the languages that aren't taught in secondary school are not widely available. As an ASU student, you all are fortunate because many of these critical languages actually are taught at ASU. We have far more language options than many schools, and so we're lucky in that way. But like I said, these are languages that are relevant to U.S. national interest in some kind of way. So we'll start with the Boren Award, and then Dr. Stoff will talk for a while about Critical Languages Scholarship, which are two of the main critical language awards, and we'll talk about a few others as well. So as I mentioned, if you have any questions while we're moving through, just pop them in the chat. We'll probably answer them, but we'll have time for Q&A at the end. The Boren Awards it's a program of the National Security Education Program, which is a Department of Defense program. It provides funding both for undergraduate and graduate students, and obviously the emphasis is on languages and world regions that are of interest to U.S. national security. It is a pathway program. A service requirement as part of it. You are expected to accept a position with the U.S. federal government of your choosing. And for people that were heading towards a government career anyway, this actually is wonderful because it does provide many benefits to help you get there. It's a quite generous award, up to $25,000. So the Boren Scholarship is for undergraduates. And so any current undergraduate first year through graduating senior would be applying for the Boren Scholarship. The minimum duration of that award is 12 weeks. And if you study between 12 weeks and 25 weeks, you would get half of that, $12,500. If you study for 25 weeks or longer, you would get the full $25,000. You can go for shorter durations if you are a STEM major, but again, their emphasis is on long-term immersion. And their preference is, like I said, for the longer terms. About 80 to 85% of the awards go to those what they call year-long programs, and anything over 25 weeks they consider year-long. The majority of our students apply for those, and overall ASU does very well in Boren. We just learned a couple of weeks ago that our historic selection rate is over 50%. So as they said, better than a coin flip. So the cool thing about Boren is it's open to all majors, all years of study. You can go at any point. And there is no minimum proficiency because you are choosing the language that you want to study. And it could be a language that there's no possibility of having studied before, or maybe you just haven't had the opportunity to study. So there is no minimum for any of the languages that you select. If you're a graduate student or plan to be a graduate student next year, you could apply for the Boren Fellowship. And I say it's up to $25,000 or $30,000. And I'll explain that. It has the same parameters as the undergraduate scholarship. It's at least 12 weeks, and you would get half the amount. If it's 25 weeks or longer, you would get the full amount. We say up to $30,000 because you can actually, as a graduate student, apply for additional funding up to $12,000 to support pre-departure domestic foreign language studies. So you could begin in the summer studying at a language training center in the States, and then continue on to a language training program in the country. The other major difference between the scholarship and the fellowship is that for the scholarship, what most people are doing is picking just what I call an off-the-shelf language training program. You identify a language program at a foreign university, or maybe it's one operated by American councils or another US university or nonprofit or whatever. It does not have to be an ASU program. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Now, graduate students have a bit more leeway. They can actually design, they can do that. They can just go and study language, but they could also engage in a research project or an internship or something of that nature. But as long as the emphasis on language study, that's perfectly acceptable. So some graduate students are doing a little dissertation or master's thesis research while they're doing their Boren Fellowship. You do need to be a U.S. citizen. This is a federally funded program. You have to be planning to study a critical foreign language. That goes without saying. You do need to be enrolled, not only at the time of application, but during the Boren Scholarship or Fellowship. And so for graduating seniors, what we simply do is adjust your official date of graduation. So Justin here, for instance, found out that he got a Boren Scholarship literally on Convocation Day last spring. I was standing in Gamage Auditorium, not Gamage, whatever we call our basketball arena now, whoever's sponsoring it now. And I said, hey, did you check your email today? He said, no. He's standing in his cap and gown. I'm like, well, you're going to Brazil. And so what we do in that particular case is work with the registrar's office to adjust your official graduation date. And obviously you can still march. You know, your studies are done, but we have to keep you on the books simply for insurance and sort of accountability purposes. If you're not a graduating senior or you're a graduate student, not a worry, like you just remain enrolled. National security is a broad concept for Boren. There are the conventional definitions, of course. If we think about the intelligence community, Department of Defense, you could be a CIA policy analyst or something like that. But just about anything in the federal government, if you stop and think about it, could qualify as national security. So this could be foreign policy work. It could be sustainable development. We've had students go who are interested in economic policy, global health, environmental studies. The way I tend to think about it is a stable, safe, happy world is a safe world. So anything we can do to promote the well-being of others throughout the world makes the world a safer place for us. And so your angle is, if you're not necessarily in a conventional national security pathway, is to think, okay, how does this help make the world a safer place? So their emphasis, of course, is on some of the more obvious government agencies, but Peace Corps is an option, USAID is an option, things like that. So once you've completed your education, whether that means you go on for continuing education or you're just done with your bachelor's or master's, within 3 years, you need to complete your service requirement. The Boren folks will help you with this. They do job fairs, they do help with resumes. There are certain agencies that Boren scholars are a high priority and they actively seek them out. What's cool is that you also get non-competitive non-compete hiring status, which means that they have to look at your applications before they look at the general application pool. So again, if you were considering a federal career anyway, this is a huge advantage, right? And so their top 4 preferences are people that want to work in the Department of State, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, or anything in the intelligence community, which is 14 different agencies. Again, these are not the only options, but if this is one of these 4 areas is your desired pathway, you automatically, they just say, good, great, we don't even have to know what the job is. I'd also like to highlight, and I think these pathways are especially attractive, are what they call regional flagship language initiatives, or the FLIs. Oops, I mistyped one. So the African Flagship Language Initiative, South Asian, Southeast Asian, and Turkish. The Southeast Asian one is brand new. What this means is that if you did one of the flagship initiatives, you would engage in domestic study of that foreign language at one of the language training centers they've designated in the weeks before you depart. And then in the fall, you would go to a designated language training program in that country. And then you have the option, if you'd like, to continue on into the spring, and they will provide additional funding for that. And that could be more language training, it could be an internship, it could be a research experience or something. That is optional. The only requirements that you do the summer and fall program if you do one of the flagships. So your options in Africa would be French and Senegal, and this is the only option for studying French as a Boren awardee, is to go to Senegal as part of the African Flagship Initiative. Swahili, Akan or Twi, Wolof, Zulu are all options. Hindi and Urdu are options for the South Asian, and the Sifli, which is the new option, you can choose Indonesian, Thai, or Vietnamese. This was just announced literally this week, brand new opportunity. And then finally, the Turfli, or the Turkish language flagship language initiative in Azerbaijan. So the other thing to note is if you are interested in studying any of these languages on this list, but you cannot commit to that summer or fall schedule, you can apply individually. You would just not be part of this initiative, which has a separate sort of quota and a separate sort of evaluation process. You could still apply to go study Turkish. You could still apply to go study Thai on your own schedule, just not part of the flagship. Common question I get. A couple of categories worth noting. If you are a participant in any of the federal language flagship programs, so at ASU, we do have a Chinese language flagship program. You get extra special consideration, and actually it's an entirely separate application chute, so to speak. Historically, our Chinese flagship students have had an extraordinarily high success rate of receiving Boren, which is wonderful because the Chinese flagship program, which we'll mention at the end of this presentation, has a capstone requirement that you spend a year abroad, or in recent years, in consideration of COVID and relations with China, they've opened up an option to actually do your language study at the Defense Language Institute. It's the only possible option for full domestic study through Boren. If you're ROTC, there's another special initiative. You get very special consideration, and I can tell you as well, if you're a military veteran, you would be highly preferred by these readers. I'd mentioned at the outset too that if you are a STEM major, you do get an exception, and you could apply for short-term summer study abroad. They recognize that one of the reasons STEM majors do not participate in these long-term study abroad programs, it's very difficult to interrupt your sequential curriculum, right? You can't just hop out of your physics sequence and hop back in whenever you're ready. So they give you that option, and you could even bundle that. If you found a research experience or something abroad, you could apply for Boren for funding for that. The most popular languages are not surprising, and these are in order of the number of awards made. There are not any specific quotas. They don't designate that there's a certain number of awards for Urdu. They work with what they get. So this is actually just descriptive, not proscriptive. Most popular choice is Mandarin, followed by Chinese, Arabic in Jordan, and then Arabic in Morocco. Russian, very popular, and that's mostly being done in Kazakhstan. And you can see the flagship programs represented in there, Portuguese becoming very popular. Yeah, again, so you don't necessarily have to be wanting to study Mandarin or Japanese to be preferred. This is just representative of what the traffic has been the last few years. Again, you can propose any language in the world, as long as it is not a Western European language, and you can make the case that it is relevant to U.S. national security. I've seen applications for indigenous languages. And so you could study in the Western Hemisphere. You could study, we've had people study Mayan languages. I've seen, there was I think an award last year for ODM in Mexico, which is interesting. You just have to make the case for why it's relevant. There are preferences in terms of target countries as well. So you notice that the language and the country don't always match up. So the green countries are their preferences. Yellow means that it is not high preference, but they'll listen to what you have to say if you can make a case for it. And then blue is just off the table, right? Unsurprisingly, Russia's not an option. You could probably go ahead and make mainland China not an option as well. And even though North Korea is a not preferred country, I think it's safe to say that it's off the table. So anytime you write an application, you also have to put a backup choice. And so even if you do put a less preferred country as your first choice, you do need to, in some countries, even require that you put a backup choice. The application is pretty straightforward. Obviously, you need to get a language assessment so we know where you are, if you have any proficiency. If you don't have, if you're just saying, I don't have any, obviously you don't need to get an embarrassing assessment. They'll want to know what is the program you've chosen. And we have resources on our Canvas and on the Boren website for identifying existing language programs. It can be a little daunting, but once you get into the Boren application, what you'll see is that you hit a drop-down list and there's all the previously used options are there. So there are well-worn paths towards these different programs. There's 2 essays, which you'll be working closely with us on. Transcripts, of course, and letters of reference. The graduate students, the Boren Fellows, need to have 3 minimum. Undergraduate applicants, the Boren Scholars, can get 2 or 3. We encourage 3. I don't recall submitting an application with only 2 letters, but if we simply can't get that 3rd letter, that's perfectly fine. So to get your wheels turning and give you a sense of what it is they're actually looking for, the prompt for the first essay is emphasizing national security. And so you need to explain the significance of your host country, or target country, target region, and language to U.S. national security. But you need to make a specific, detailed, focused argument. And I tend to think about it like a Venn diagram. You know, there's the target language of country, everything that's going on there in terms of current events, anything that's happened there relevant. U.S. national security is what of that is relevant to Joe's taxpayer. You know, why should the average person care about this language or country? And then there's your professional or intellectual interest, and the overlap between those 3 areas is what I suggest be the topic of your essay. The narrower the topic, the better. The more focused the topic, the better. They're not looking for a Wikipedia article on Azerbaijan. If you're interested in economic development, they would like to hear about the relevance of economic development in Azerbaijan to U.S. national security. All right, so happy to explore topics with you. The second essay is more of a personal statement, and so they'd like to hear about an experience that you think is relevant to the Boren experience. You know, something that formed your character, or something that was an aha moment in your life that you think is a good example of your preparation for this experience. They'd like to know about your future plans, how this language and the Boren experience will help prep you for that, and then what your ideas are for federal service and why you're motivated to work in federal service. And if the answer is I'm not, then Boren might not be a good fit for you. Boren is one of the programs where I think fit matters most of all. And so if you fit kind of all of the different requirements or expectations, then your odds of success depend largely on the amount of effort you put into the application. In terms of timeline, the application is now open, and we have set a December 1st deadline for intake meetings and to open an application. If you don't open an application and meet with one of us before December 1, you will not be included in the campus endorsement process, and you'll be applying on your own. We just do this to help you manage your time, because as you can see, there's a very tight turnaround between the start of the spring term and the actual submission deadlines. The campus deadline is January 11th, which is right at the start of the semester. And we are turning around quickly and beginning campus interviews. And so you'll meet with committee members. Lately, we've just been doing one-on-one interviews. And then by January 24 or 31, you have to submit your final application. So between now and January 11, you will be working on these application materials with consultation from us, and of course, any other trusted faculty mentors. You'll find out about the award in April, and there are, of course, sometimes alternates called up, which I think was Justin's case, or maybe Brazil was just a little bit late in announcing. So, all right, I didn't see any questions popping up while we were talking about Boren, but I'm sure you'll have some, and we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Dr. Stoff, who is our specialist in the Critical Languages Scholarship.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Mock. So hi, everyone. Yes, this program, the Critical Languages Scholarship Program, is, again, another U.S. government program sponsored by the Department of State. And it has a similar intention to Boren, that is to increase the number of Americans who are able to be proficient in the languages that they've deemed critical for our foreign interests and our national security. Like the Boren, they really have no limitations in terms of majors. They're not looking for a specific, you don't have to be wanting to go into foreign service to do a critical languages scholarship. The only thing that you really need to show, though, is that you are really dedicated, committed to the study of this language, that it's not just a one-off, that it's not just a whim, but it is something that is crucially important to your future goals and to making sure that the world becomes a better place in some way or another. Okay, so the difference between the big difference between the Boren and the Critical Languages Scholarship is that the Critical Languages Scholarship is just a summer program and is a very intensive, full immersion, group-based program where you go to the country where the language is spoken, and you are with a group of other students from around the country and possibly around the world, and you are in classes for 3 or 4 hours a day each morning, and then in the afternoon you engage in cultural activities, all the while speaking and listening in the language, which is really the best way to learn. And as a result of the 8 to 10 weeks that you will spend in the summer, you will gain the equivalent of an entire year's worth of study in that language, so that when you come back, you will literally be at the next level of the language, and you will gain credit for that, which can be applied to your ASU transcript demonstrating that you have that language. The Critical Languages Scholarship is a little more limited with regard to the languages you can choose. They have 14 different languages with programs in countries. Unlike the Boren, you don't have to find your own program. The programs are already set up by CLS. You just apply, and then you basically tell them what level you're at, and they put you with a cohort of similar students who are at the same level. And again, open to all majors, open to all years of study. So you can be a first-year student all the way up to a PhD candidate. There's really no difference. It's not a different scholarship program. They're all the same. You just have to have the commitment to the language, again, and show that it's really important for your development. So like the Boren, because it is a U.S. sponsored, government sponsored program, you do need to be a U.S. citizen in order to be eligible. You need to be enrolled in an accredited program at the time of your application, which would be this fall. But unlike the Boren, you do not have to be enrolled once you go on the CLS program. So you can graduate and you don't have to demonstrate that you're going to grad school or you're going to do continuing enrollment or anything like that. You just have to be enrolled when you apply. There is a minimum age of 18 in order to participate in the program, and CLS has recently changed their rules that had limited individuals from participating in the program to only twice. Now you can do it unlimited times. Basically, you can learn all of the 14 languages if you want. You can keep repeating them as long as you're in school for that long. There is a pre-departure orientation that is required by CLS to attend in Washington, D.C. So you might want to think about this if you are going to be abroad before the program starts. They usually require awardees to return to the U.S. and attend that D.C. program. Some of the programs I've heard are now doing them virtually, so there may be a workaround for that, but it is something you should keep in mind when you're applying. The program covers all of your expenses, basically, all of your travel to and from the Washington, D.C. for the pre-departure orientation, all of the travel to and from the country where you will be doing the language study, all of your visa fees, all of the housing and the meals that you will partake in, all of the cultural excursions that I mentioned are part of the program. And again, you can get academic credit applicable to your ASU transcript. So these are the various languages. As I mentioned, there are 14 different languages that CLS offers, but they do have some prerequisites. So the languages that are listed under the category that says no previous study, so Indonesian, Azerbaijani, Turkish, Persian, Bangla, Hindi, Swahili, and Portuguese, you don't have to know a word of. And you can apply to go to CLS program, again, as long as you can demonstrate that you really need proficiency in this language. Some do require 1 year of study. Those are Korean, Russian, and Arabic. And then some do require 2 years, and that's Chinese and Japanese. I'm going to make a caveat about the Russian, Arabic, and the Chinese because there is a corollary program that CLS offers called CLS Spark that does allow you to study the first year of those languages, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. So how do you apply? All the application materials are online, just like the Boren. There is no endorsement required, so you don't have to go through the process where you submit a campus application and then have an interview. So you can do this without that process. You have to pick one language, though. You cannot say, well, I'll do Portuguese, but I have a backup of Persian. That you can't do that. You have to pick one language. CLS has also recently made a change in that they have no longer required letters of recommendation, which is really great. The idea behind this is to open it up to as many applicants as possible and to remove any barriers for students who may find it difficult to find those letters of recommendation. There are 3 short essays that you have to write. And when I say short, I mean really short, like 200 to 300 words, which cover things like your commitment to the language, your ability to be flexible and adaptable in a new cultural environment, and your ability to contribute to the State Department's mission of cultural ambassadorship. How will you share aspects of your culture and engage in mutual exchange with the culture in which you will be immersed? And then there's a statement of purpose, which is a little bit longer, about 500 words, where you need to explain, again, why this language is so important, vital to your future development, and why what you're going to do with that language is important for the world to make it a better place, basically. So I did mention that there are some languages that have the prerequisites of 1 or 2 years that CLS has now created a special program to address because they know there are a lot of students who cannot take those languages. Either their institutions don't offer them. Unlike ASU, we do offer those languages, Chinese, Arabic, and Russian, but a lot of times students just can't fit language study into their schedules, or they have other barriers that don't allow them to pursue language study through the regular course offerings at their university. So what they offer is this program that's a virtual language study program, which runs concurrently with your academic year. So that's that 8-week summer program that's not quite correct. So you take the courses during the school year. It gives you 10 hours of live instruction with a tutor that is a native speaker of the language. And it also allows you to engage in kind of cultural activities alongside the other cohort, the other folks that are in the cohort with you who are studying. So you get to meet the other students and you get knowledge of the culture as well as the language. Again, this is only for Arabic, Chinese, and Russian, and you have to prove that you haven't had any formal classroom experience and you really cannot pursue that. You just won't have the opportunity. CLS Spark has the same advantage of regular CLS, and that is that you will get non-compete status in the federal hiring process. So if you finish the CLS Spark program or the regular CLS study abroad program, you get non-compete status. And for CLS Spark awardees, you get a automatic status of semi-finalist for the summer abroad program. So in other words, the idea is that you get the training that you need to get that 1-year prerequisite, and then you're automatically qualified to go to the abroad program, and they sort of fast track you into that program. So the application timeline for CLS is very short, and it's coming up right away. So October 2nd, which is Monday, the application will open. The deadline is November 14th. This does not give us a lot of time. So I highly recommend that you get started, make an intake appointment with me, and we'll get the ball rolling. You will be notified of a semi-finalist status in January or February. In March, the regular award notifications go out. And then between March and May, alternates are promoted. And I just want to say that that is a really good way for you to actually get this award. Almost every year we have an alternate who gets promoted. And then in June, you will have your orientation and you'll embark on your program. The one other great benefit of CLS is there are no strings attached, right? You do not have to do any kind of government service, or you don't owe anything back to the government for sponsoring you in this program. Okay, so just really quick, the criteria for the award is proving that you have the potential to succeed in a rigorous academic setting. So you want to prove this through all of the very difficult courses you've taken. If you've done other immersion programs, that's another good way to prove it. You want to show your commitment to language learning, the connection between the target language and career academic goals, your ability to adapt to an intensive program and a challenging cultural environment, and what you bring to the program. Okay, so the next program that I want to briefly talk about is the Gilman Scholarship. And the Gilman Scholarship is really set up more for study abroads generally, and you can obtain up to $5,000 for those, but they can be used for programs that include a language component. So we're going to talk about our own program here at ASU, the Critical Languages Institute, or CLI. They are only open to Pell Grant recipients, so you do have to prove that you are a Pell Grant recipient, but you can also get an additional $3,000 for Critical Need Language Award. So if you're studying one of these critical languages and you want to go on a study abroad program and incorporate language study in that, you can use the Gilman towards that.
Another federal program is the Fulbright U.S. Student Program. This is the largest and one of the longest running major fellowship programs in existence. Essentially, I hate to say in simplest terms because Fulbright is so big, it's unfortunately quite complicated, but in basic terms, it provides a full year of funding for an academic experience abroad. That could mean individual study, it could mean formal study in a graduate program, it could mean an independent research project of your own design, artistic practice. About half of the awards go to people who are volunteering to be assistant English teachers in foreign classrooms and ambassadors. You do need to have a bachelor's degree in hand before you can leave to go. So the soonest you can apply is your graduating undergraduate year, meaning for most people, their senior year. And that application deadline happens in October. We begin the process in April because it is very substantial. There's no minimum GPA, it's open to all fields. You do need to apply through ASU if you are currently enrolled And again, this could be open to graduating seniors, could be open to recent graduates, could be open to master's students or even PhD students. Obviously, language study is a huge component of cultural exchange, which is the primary mission of Fulbright. And there are a couple of options for what they call critical language enhancement awards. I believe any of the Indic languages are an option. Mandarin and Russian, which again, those options are becoming limited. But again, you can get additional funding for critical language study. And of course, anywhere you go in the world, you can expect to engage in foreign language study. So again, big program for us, really encourage everyone to consider that. And there's a very natural pipeline between Boren and CLS and Fulbright. And I think if you got CLS and then went on a Boren and then went on a Fulbright, I think there's got to be a special name for that. I don't want to call it a home run because that needs 4 bases. But the Blakemore Freeman Fellowships, this is a nonprofit organization that wants to promote exchange between the US and Asia. But this is a really wonderful opportunity for full funding for an academic year of advanced language study in East or Southeast Asia. And so there aren't a lot of opportunities out there to get funding to study Khmer, for instance, Burmese, Indonesian. It's open to graduating seniors or recent graduates, and you must already have some language study. So if you were to do one of these other programs and get it to a near advanced level, then Blakemore Freeman could put you there for a full year to get you to full professional proficiency. So I've had students do this in the past.
Okay, so another really great opportunity that you all have as ASU students is that we have our very own Critical Languages Institute, which is hosted through our Malikian Center for Russian, Eurasian, and East European Studies. We are one of only 2 Title VIII language programs in the country, the other being Indiana University, that offers these full immersion intensive summer language programs, which again are really the best ways to learn language. And so we have been designated a national training institute. We have students that come from all over the country that come here to participate in these summer intensive the programs, part of which can be here at ASU, and there are online components as well. And then you also have the option with some of the languages to take your study abroad and to be immersed in the country where the languages are spoken. The great thing about the CLI program for ASU students, it is 100% tuition free. The only thing you would pay is a small flat fee, which you can get all kinds of aid through the Malikian Center and other sources to pay for. So you could essentially go to CLI, again, without spending a dime of your own money. So CLI also offers 14 different languages. Some of them overlap with CLS, but some of them are different. And again, they have different levels. So for first year, you can study Tatar, and there is an online component for that. First and second year, you can study Albanian, Hebrew, Macedonian, Persian, Polish, Turkish, Ukrainian, Uzbek. You'll notice that the ones with the little star mean that there is a study abroad component. So you can extend your study and go to a country where the language is spoken. The plus signs mean that there's an online version of it. And then if you want to go more advanced, there are programs that offer languages, Armenian, BCS, Indonesian, and Kazakh, all the way through first year through very advanced levels. And again, many of them have study abroad programs. So the Malikian Center, as I mentioned, has money to give to students who want to study these critical languages. So you can definitely apply and you can get up to $6,000 for these various programs. You can apply it to the CLI program. Both the CLI program and the center scholarships will have a deadline of January this year or this coming year. And if you want more information about that, I do recommend that you check out their website. The other thing that the Malikian Center now offers, because we have been lucky to be awarded a Title VI National Resource Center by the U.S. Department of State, which gives us $900,000 in foreign language and area studies fellowship money to be distributed over 4 years. We're now in our second year of distributions. And these are academic year fellowships that provide undergraduates with $5,000 stipend and a $10,000 tuition grant. and graduate students $20,000 stipend and $18,000 in tuition. You do need to demonstrate that you're at an intermediate level of language study and that you are pursuing a course in area studies that's related to that language. Unless you're a graduate student who's already achieved proficiency in one language, you can start a new language that you have not yet studied. And these are the languages, again, that are offered. You can see that they align very much with the Malikian Center's regional interest. Again, for the FLAS, you do need to be a U.S. citizen, but you also could be a national or a permanent resident. There is a technical requirement that you have a 3.0 GPA. However, if you explain that there are some extenuating circumstances that you do not have that GPA, it is still possible to get the award. You obviously need to demonstrate that you have interest in the region. And you also need to be eligible for financial aid. So this is both a merit and a need-based award. But they are particularly looking for students from underrepresented groups to apply. So any identity groups that are usually underrepresented, but also, again, veterans, U.S. military, ROTC are also encouraged to apply. So those applications will open on November 1st and close on January 31st. And this is the website you'd want to go to get more information. And you can also reach out to the Malikian Center's FLAS coordinator, Teresa Zim, with any other questions you may have. And as far as writing the applications, I would be the advisor you'd want to make appointments with. I'm the one who would help you with your essays.
I can't emphasize enough how exciting it is to actually have a FLAS program here at ASU. You heard that $900,000 number. They are looking to spend that money. So if you meet those requirements, I strongly encourage you to consider it. It's a very generous program. Another program that we're incredibly fortunate to have at ASU is the Chinese language flagship program. And again, this is coming from the same sort of funding structure that Boren is coming from. This is a DoD funded program. It's a multi-year program at ASU that you basically layer on top of or meld with your primary studies at ASU. And the object is that you're getting to professional level proficiency in Mandarin Chinese. There are scholarships available to help with the required study abroad components. And so you are going to spend some time abroad, probably in Taiwan, studying Chinese. And at the end of your 4 years of undergraduate study, there's a 5th year component that includes immersive language study and a professional internship opportunity. They have admissions rolling throughout the year. You don't have to enter in first year, as far as I understand. There's different entry points that you can join the program. So wonderful program. Again, also another very generous program. And as I mentioned, the students that participate in the flagship program are also in wonderful position to secure many other fellowships because of the high reputation of this program and the high level of proficiency those students develop. You can investigate a lot more opportunities for different types of fellowships on our website. So onsa.asu.edu. We keep a modest scholarship database there that you can search through, and you can look through more details about some of the awards that we've mentioned. There are, of course, other smaller, more niche awards that might be of interest to you as well. And when you're ready to talk to one of us, you can make an appointment from our website as well. So you don't have to email us to find out when we're available and do the old back and forth thing. You can put yourself on our calendars right through the website itself. So for the awards that do have a campus application component or endorsement component, like the Boren, you can find those instructions on our website under the Apply Now tab. And as well, you can just reach out to us directly. Once you get involved with the advising process, you'll figure out who your primary advisor is. But a lot of the times you can work with multiple people in our office. So for questions specifically related to Boren, the best choice is to email me. For questions specifically related to CLS or FLAS, reach out to Dr. Stoff. And as Dr. Stoff points out, while you're at the website, I would subscribe to our weekly bulletin if you haven't done so already. It's the best way to stay abreast of what opportunities are coming up, deadlines, other events, things like that. And that way we never have to hear, oh, I didn't know. So we hate hearing that. So at any rate, great time to pause. Questions. And again, you're welcome to pop them in the chat. You're also welcome to unmute yourself and ask them in the normal human way of doing so. Oh, this is a long one. So Sophia asks, She says that somebody mentions federally funded scholarships like the DoD SMART program disqualify from even other federally funded scholarships such as Born or CLS. I don't know. So if I receive a federally funded scholarship, does it? That would be a very specific requirement of something like SMART. But for all the programs we discussed here today, students quite frequently stack them. And in fact, once you, if you apply for Fulbright, one of the things that you'll see is there's a question, have you won any of these other awards? And there's a drop-down list that includes Gilman, Boren, CLS, Pickering, and several other federal programs. So if there is any prohibition like that, it would be specifically to SMART, and we would have to look at that directly, but I'm not familiar with any other prohibitions for other federal awards.
I should also add that you can hold some of these awards concurrently. In other words, you can apply for a CLS and a Boren and do the CLS program in the summer and then go on your Boren for the year. Or you can apply for a CLS and then a Fulbright and do the CLS in the program and then start your Fulbright. They do not work against each other. In fact, they very much help each other. These programs are kind of a little bit incestuous, right? They look at candidates who have won these awards as sort of more of a sure thing, and so it really helps you with these. And I would also recommend, if you're thinking about doing any of the languages that the Critical Languages Institute here at ASU offers, I would start there, especially if you're at a more beginner level with the language. Take advantage of the resources that we have here, and then move to doing something like CLS. CLS is a very, very competitive award. It has a less than 10% acceptance rate, although we at ASU do a little bit better. We're closer to 12.5%. But unlike the Boren, which, as Dr. Mox mentioned, has a over 50% acceptance rate, it is a difficult program. But if you do something like CLI first, you will demonstrate to them that you have the ability to undertake a very rigorous full immersion intensive language program that's very similar to what CLS is offering.
And Dr. Stoff and I have both at one time or another sat on reading committees for critical languages scholarship, and I can tell you a large portion of those applications do not do a good job of explaining how this language study is going to continue or what efforts you've made prior to or how it relates to future career. I read for beginning Korean once, and the majority of the reasoning had to do with I enjoy K-pop and watching Korean food videos and things like that. Obviously, if you're working with us, we're going to ensure that you do a good job connecting those dots, which is why our selection rates are higher than the average. But yeah, good question. For those of you that haven't looked at the chat, a good question is if it says 2 years of study, does that include high school, middle school, or anything like that? They say the equivalent of 2 years of college level study, and generally in foreign language study, they consider a year of high school to be the equivalent of a semester of college study. So one full, it would be 2 full years of high school would be the equivalent of 1 year of college level study. I should point out with CLS, they actually say that the summer program is the equivalent of 1 year of college study. That's how much immersion is. I don't know how much they enforce it, but most of the programs actually require you to sign a pledge that you'll only speak in the target language while you're there, which of course is difficult if you're taking beginning Azerbaijani. But Sophia asks, with Boren, does the backup country and your first choice country need to be the same, specialize in the same language? Yes. You are targeting a language, and so you're identifying both a primary choice and a secondary choice program for study. In some of the countries that are, let's just say, a little bit more unpredictable in terms of where we might go in terms of current events, they'll ask you to pick a secondary country as well. But yeah, you need to focus on one language. Yeah, you could choose two. The question is, would you choose China and Taiwan? We'll have to double check what their guidance on that is, but what everyone's been doing is basically choosing 2 programs in Taiwan, and even the domestic program at the Defense Language Institute. But yeah, you can put down China, but what they're basically saying is that you're not going to get that, so you better have a backup, unless things change radically in the next year or 2, which I don't think. Good questions. Any other questions?
One thing I did want to mention that I didn't quite cover in the CLS part of the presentation was that the language evaluation is a little bit different than the Bourne, whereas the Bourne you need to have an official kind of evaluation by a language instructor. The CLS evaluation is a self-evaluation. And so like with the question about the level of the language instruction that you've had, yes, it's saying the equivalent of college level courses, but there's a lot of ways that you can prove equivalency, right? If you speak Chinese, you know, at home, and you've done so since you were born, right? There's a lot of ways you can demonstrate that you have what the equivalent of the 2 years of college level would be. And they ask you very, very specific questions about how you learn the language, you know, down to like what kind of textbooks you used or what kind of videos you watched. And so you have the opportunity to really explain to them, yes, I do have the requisite amount of proficiency to qualify me for this program.
Well, wonderful. Last call for questions before we let you go. Well, good. I do hope that we're going to hear from many of you. If you do have more complicated questions or something occurs to you later, be sure that you do reach out to us via email. We do have another question popped in. I've completed an undergraduate master's degree in mechanical systems engineering, but now I am completing an undergraduate degree in Chinese. For Bourne, would I apply for the undergraduate program or the fellowship? Great question. The fellowship would be as if you are enrolled as a graduate student. So since you are enrolled in an undergraduate program at present, you would be applying for the Bourne Scholarship. Now, again, that was one of the major differences between those two programs, is Bourne requires to be enrolled while you're doing the program. CLS doesn't care necessarily. Okay. Well, again, reach out to us with questions, and if you're ready to start the process, you can go ahead and start booking appointments to talk about these awards, and we will get you off and running. Applications are both open for Bourne and for CLS, and many of these other awards will be opening later, or for the ASU programs are kind of always open. So thank you for your time and attention on a Friday afternoon. And I'm super excited too. So in case you can't tell, Dr. Stoff and I are both very passionate about these programs. The students that we've had go on them have had life-changing, wonderful experiences. And so we would love to see that repeated. So thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.